many of you know, I've been doing for over a year, almost 2 years now, working on reviews of the Jerzy Hoffman adaptation of Henry Zinkvik's trilogy, because I fucking love these movies and I want to get the word out there more. And they quickly became the two videos I did. I've done Pan Vodioski and Deluge. They quickly became two of the most popular videos on my channel. But I uploaded the one for the Deluge, and within 48 hours it got pulled down for copyright reasons. So I figured it's probably come using the soundtrack in there, and oddly enough, for like a 6-hour movie, the soundtrack is only like 50 minutes long. Not a whole lot of background music in that film. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just pull the music out. It's not a big deal. I had it tuned down, or the volume so low on there that you couldn't really hear it. No big deal. Pulled that out, re-uploaded the video, and it stayed up for like 3 or 4 days. And in those 3 or 4 days, it actually surpassed the original video. The original upload only had like 19 views, and 3 of them were probably me get the URL to share to people. The second upload became like the 3rd most popular video on my channel within those couple of days. Alright, I did it, you know? And then I get an email saying it's been blocked worldwide for copyright reasons. Not sure what copyright reasons. So I'm kind of at a dead end, maybe because I used the trailer for the 2014 version of the film in it. You know, when I was going to do it with Fire and Sword, I couldn't find a decent trailer for it anyway, so from that point on I was going to start making my own trailers anyway. But again, the trailers are up on YouTube anyway. I mean, the whole movie is on YouTube if you really want to find it. It's just not subtitled. So I'm not sure what the problem is. And I'm a small channel. I can't fight it. There's like nothing I can do at this point about it. So I was trying to come up with a way, like I've still got the raw footage of me sitting in front of the camera here, reading off the synopsis I wrote up, and then just, you know, talking off the cuff about my actual thoughts and feelings about the film. I was like, I guess I could upload that. I mean, it's going to be some choppy, fast editing, which this video might actually be too. But it could work, but it's just me sitting around smoking a cigar like I am now. 20 minutes reading a script, just like staring at my computer like none of this happened, because I'm terrible at that sort of thing, and then 10 minutes of basically this. Here's where things become an even bigger problem. So I was going to sit down and film this video yesterday. Didn't get the chance. Decided to do it today. As I was doing it, I decided to check the analytics on the Pan Vodioski video, because I remember that being a fairly popular video, and apparently that got pulled down too. Wasn't aware of that, but I did get like 2 emails from YouTube that were like attached to each other, so one of them must have been for the Pan Vodioski video. So whoever owns the rights to these movies does not want you seeing my reviews of them for some reason, despite the fact that they were overwhelmingly positive, and I'm telling you, go find copies of these movies and watch them. And I wasn't saying anything like, go pirate them, because I'm not going to do that. You got this box set readily available, and if you buy the individual movies, they're not terribly expensive. So I don't need to say some crap like that. So I don't know what the problem is. Those videos are gone. And as for with Fire and Sword, you're not getting one anytime soon. Maybe I could redo them with me kind of just here doing redoing sort of the second half of the video where I just talk about the movie. I won't do an overview of it. It'd be a kind of a boring video, just me sitting in front of the camera like this telling you what to film, but it works for Razor Fist, but he's weirdly entertaining. I'm not. So, let's go ahead and do a recap though, because you might want to hear my thoughts on Fire and Sword. So, Pan Vodioski, most of you probably saw the video because it was up for what? Almost 9 months before they pulled it down. Fantastic fucking movie. Thaddeus Lomanek is amazing as Michael Vodioski. It's the shortest film of the 3. If you like old school historical films, it's worth seeing. Then there is The Deluge. Thaddeus Lomanek returns as Michael Vodioski. You also have Daniel Obolensky, who played the villain Asya in Pan Vodioski. He comes back into play in The Deluge as the main character, Kimmets. Really kind of cool. Jerzy Hoffman asked him to take the lead role, and he was like, I don't know, he'd been in a few movies. He didn't think he was really a leading man. Plus, he thought people might be confused because he was the villain in the previous film. I said in my review of Pan Vodioski that the cool thing is he's the villain and he gets what he deserves, but he does make the character sympathetic. Kimmich is sort of the same way, because at the start of the film he is more of a villain. He's not a nice guy, and you watch through his arc of him making these poor decisions and coming around and becoming this hero by the end of the film. And honestly, Daniel Obolensky is just perfect in that part. Like, nobody else could have done that. The other character, Margosita Bronek, who plays the main female character in The Deluge. Olanka, I couldn't think of her name for some reason. She's fantastic. Everything I said about the character of Basha in Pan Vodioski, it holds over here. She's a great, strong female character. Halfway through the movie, she does become the damsel in distress, and I know that really pisses people off. It's like, well, you had a strong female character, and then they get captured. But she wasn't that type of strong female character. She wasn't a fighter like Basha was. So it's believable that she does end up taking the role of this damsel in distress halfway through the film. But in the earlier scenes where she is this strong, more of a leader of her people and everything, she's great. Like it's believable on both ends, and that's something that's not easy to pull off and you don't see in a lot of films. It's usually one or the other, and you don't believe one or the other. But in this case, she pulls both sides of the story off. Not story, role. My mistake. So, both films, I mentioned the soundtrack is meh. It's really nothing special. It's more like just kind of some traditional Polish music. It works in the film setting, but again, it's not something you're going to go out and buy. I do have a copy that has all 3 film scores. I bought it for the With Fire and Sword score, so you pretty much know where I'm going with that one. But Pan Vodioski and The Deluge, aka Potop, the soundtracks are okay. I listen to them on occasion, but not really. This soundtrack is expensive. I mean, I looked for months to find a copy. I got this for like $30, but the inside of the case is all screwed up. The discs keep coming loose. I had to put the disc somewhere else. Most copies of that you find that are in good shape are like $100 and up. It's not worth it. And all 3 soundtracks are readily available on YouTube. I know I said I was going to tell you to pirate this stuff, but they're on YouTube. And we'll get to With Fire and Sword, but trust me, you're going to want to listen to the soundtrack for that. I'm actually going to go ahead and put the soundtrack music in the background of this video. Might get a copyright claim on that too, again, who knows, but you know, at this point I just don't care. Since I can't do a full video, at least not right now, again, maybe we'll get to it when I can just sit down and blab about the movies. 1999's With Fire and Sword. What do I think about this one? Okay, so The Deluge is considered the second most popular film in Poland, like going by ticket sales. No idea what the first most popular is. Tried to find that out, couldn't find it out. And this is considered like one of the greatest films of all time. I'm just going to say it. Out of the 3, it's kind of my least favorite. I definitely would recommend it, but again, it's like 6 hours long, and a lot of it is just these long panning shots. Like, okay, you know in Star Trek The Motion Picture, like the first 10 minutes of the film is just a slow pan across the hull of the Enterprise? There's a lot of that going on in this film. It's not dull like it is in Star Trek, though, for some reason. It's a lot of times it's like armies marching or there's huge battle scenes, so they make it work, but it can be drawn out. I'm the type of person, I'll usually watch like part 1 one night, part 2 another night. I've never sat down and watched the whole thing back to back. And of course, in 2014, there was a re-edit done for the 40th anniversary of the film where they cut out something like 2 hours worth of footage, and I've heard it didn't really hurt the movie any. It's still just as good, and it moves a bit quicker for more modern audiences, so that's pretty cool. So I just want to throw that out there, that I would agree that this is probably one of the greatest movies ever made, but on a personal note, I would rather watch With Fire and Sword. This is the single greatest film ever made, bar none. It is amazing. Let's get it out of the way since I mentioned the soundtrack. Holy fucking shit, man. It is the greatest film score I've ever heard. Like, it's the reason I bought this. Like I said, I'm going to have some of that in the background. We might take a minute, and I might just play a little bit of the music for you here in a minute. I don't know. We'll see how I edit this. But if you get one thing out of this video, when you're done watching it, look up With Fire and Sword 1999 soundtrack, OST, however you want to put it in the search engine. It's here on YouTube. It'll fucking blow your mind, okay? That's how serious I am about this. It's fantastic. But everything about these films. So, you've got Michael Zabrowski, I believe. Zabrowski, I'm not sure on the pronunciation. He plays the main character in this one. Oh man, his name escapes me for the moment. Jan. I think it was Jan. He plays the main guy in this. He's fantastic. He does a lot of historical and fantasy epics. And when you watch this, you get to see him like, he's kind of got the look of Geralt from The Witcher. And the funny thing is, the film he did immediately after this one was he played Geralt in the 2001 adaptation of The Witcher, which actually goes under the name Hexer because they hadn't coined the name Witcher yet. So the non-Polish version is called Hexer. That was another film I was going to talk about. We might have to just do these like this from now on, I guess. I don't know. We won't get into it now. You've got Elizabeth Scorpio? I can't pronounce her name. Normally I have to take time to try and learn these names, and obviously I'm doing this off the cuff. You see her name up there. She's probably the only actress in these three films that you probably know because she was the Bond girl in GoldenEye. So she's fantastic. Now, you've got Olenka in The Deluge, and you've got Basha and Pan Vodioski, who are these strong female characters, and you've got Helena in this, and with Fire and Sword, who is absolutely not. She is the damsel in distress, 110%. What do they call that? That scale they use to measure like how good like women in films are. And like one of the things is there has to be more than one female character, and they have to do more than talk about like men. This film, her character would not pass that test at all. But again, it's a story from what, the 1800s that's set in the 1300s. So it's a little bit more understandable in that. She is your typical Polish noblewoman sort of in this. She is the object of affection. All these films have some kind of a love story, and they always seem kind of forced. I think it really comes off worse in With Fire and Sword, and I will say in the book it plays out a little bit better because the whole scene where Jan and Helena meet, there's this whole thing with her having this falcon, and the falcon lands on her arm and like reaches over with one of his talons and grabs Jan's arm and like pulls his arm over and like puts their hands together. And the way it's written, yeah, it's a love at first sight thing, but the way it's written, it's like a couple of pages describing this, and you're like, oh yeah, I can see this. Doesn't really pay off in the movie. It's just like, here's the falcon, done, and they're in love. So again, it doesn't really pay off quite as well in the movie, but it works well enough. I can't think of the actor that plays Colonel Vodioski, Michael Vodioski in this one. Because again, I didn't really sit down and get this, but he's really good. Thaddeus Lomanek had long passed away before this was made, and he would have been too old since this is the first story. But the guy that plays him does a really good job. That little nose twitch that Thaddeus would do in the other two films, it was kind of subtle. You might not have noticed it. I never really actually noticed it until I watched With Fire and Sword, because the actor who plays Vodioski in this one, he does do it, but it's way more noticeable. I'm like, what is he doing with his nose? And then I went back and watched the other two films. I'm like, oh, he does that whenever he's getting an idea. Somehow I never caught that. I don't remember if that was in the books or not. So, but I like that. That carried over from the previous films. He did a really good job with that. He's also, his next film after With Fire and Sword also ended up being The Witcher, and the scene where his character shows up is great because Geralt is going to meet somebody, and then this guy comes out of this tent, and Geralt gets this big smile, and I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if he didn't know that one of the other actors from With Fire and Sword was cast in that role, because he looks like surprised. It genuinely looks like two old friends surprisingly seeing each other for the first time in years, and just you get this great effect from that. But yeah, With Fire and Sword has another connection to The Witcher. The villain, Bohun, is played by, again, I can't think of the actor's name, but he actually voices Geralt in the original Polish versions of the Witcher video games. So that's kind of cool. We've got like two versions of Geralt, like one as the hero, one as the villain in this film. So that's pretty cool. With Fire and Sword, roughly just under 4 hours long, so it's longer than Pan Vodioski, but not as long as The Deluge. The version that comes in this set is the TV version, which is actually an extended version, but it's really easy to watch because it's done as like 4 45 to 50 minute episodes, so you actually do get extra content in this version as opposed to if you just had the theatrical version. But it's a lot easier to watch than even The Deluge, especially if you're OCD like me. And like The Deluge, you just want to sit down and try and watch straight through, and again, I've never been able to do it. But with Fire and Sword, you could watch it over like 4 days, watching an episode a day, and you would just be engaged in it, and it's great. A bit of a spoiler, but it's something that's always kind of bothered me. Plus, it's like almost, what, a 20-year-old movie at this point. So there's a scene towards the end of the film where some of the main characters go to save Helena, who's being held in this cave by what they've been told is a witch. So one of the guys brings a stake, and he drives, they knock the witch unconscious, and then he takes this wooden stake and drives this wooden stake through the witch's heart. And it's just, I don't know what it is, but it's like, okay, to him it makes sense. He thinks she's this witch, she's a supernatural creature. You drive a stake through a supernatural creature's heart to typically kill it. Oh, you destroy the brain or the heart is typically how this goes. So in his mind, it makes sense. But we, the viewer, we know this is like historical fiction. She's not a witch, at least not in any supernatural sense. If she is, it's more of a religious, pagan sense. Either way, she's just this old woman. This man just drove a wooden stake through the heart of a human being. Sure, she's the villain, but I don't know why I find that like crude. Like, you see the impalement of Asya in Pan Vodioski, and somehow this comes off as worse to me. Like, she didn't deserve. She was unconscious. Just take Helena and go. Like, but no, they drive a stake through a human being's heart. It's weird. Speaking of impalements, there is an impalement scene in this one, and it's actually kind of funny. So the villain sent this envoy to, I believe it was the Hetman. It's been like a year since I watched this. It might have been the king, but I think it was the Polish Hetman in this one. And, you never kill the envoy, right? You don't kill the messenger. But it's just, I forget what the whole message is, but it's something really condescending. And the Hetman just turns to one of his guards and goes, kill them. And the one envoy's like, you can't kill us. We're here as messengers. And he turns, he's like, oh, okay. Turns back to his guard and goes, kill them so that they know they're dying. And then the next scene, you see the Hetman and his men riding off on their horses. And there's this envoy they sent, impaled on these spikes, and he looks dead, and all of a sudden he looks over and he's like, screw you guys, or something like that. And that's something I'll say with Fire and Sword. It actually has a lot of humor in it. The one character, his name is Longinus, and when Zalgoba introduces him, he introduces him as like Sir Long Anus or something like that. Like, you get stuff like that. And his whole story is that he's got this huge, massive, like, executioner sword that he uses in battle, and they makes the comment that, everybody's like, oh, it's a two-handed sword, and he goes, oh, you can use it two-handed or one, and I guess he gives it to Jan, and Jan tries to hold it up with one hand, and he can't do it, and everybody kind of laughs, and Zalgoba says something like, don't feel bad, everybody here has tried, nobody can do it, and then Longinus takes it in one hand and just starts whipping it around, and he tells a story about how one of his ancestors had used this sword to, like, decapitate 3 guys at once in battle, and he makes a comment that he's trying to do that himself to live up to the family name. And he says, until they ask him how serious he is about this, and he's like, well, I took a vow of celibacy until I can take 3 heads at once. So when they meet Helena and her aunt and their wagon is stuck in this like swamp, and Jan's like, I'll take the younger one, you get the older one, and Longinus is like, why do I have to save the older one? And Jan looks at him and goes, because you're the one with the vow of celibacy. Like, you get some good humor like that. And there's a lot of scenes that'll make you laugh. The one character, I can't think of his name, but he's sort of he's kind of the sneaky type character, I guess. He's the one who drives the stake through the witch's heart. And he'll tell stories, but people always like refer to him as a peasant, and he'll always respond like, I'm not a peasant, I'm a noble, just a very poor one. And like the way he says it, it's fantastic. Krzysztof Skolowski, who was in The Deluge as Ro Kowalski, he returns to With Fire and Sword as Zalgoba, and I think all 3 actors, they've had a different Zalgoba in each film, but he is absolutely my favorite. I love him in this movie. And he's actually on a Bahun's side towards the beginning of the film. He's sort of more on Bahun, and then he sees that Bahun's this evil dude, and he goes against him, and he gets like a really awesome fight scene where they've captured him, and he's tied up in this barn, and he has to escape. And like, I said he doesn't look like in Pan Vodioski, I said he doesn't look like the type of guy who'd be an action hero. But you always hear about him in battle, but you never see it. You get to see him fight, and With Fire and Sword, a couple of Bahun's guys, and he really puts up a good fight. There's a duel, much like the duel in the Deluge between Vodioski and Kimmix. There's a fight between Bohun and Vodioski, and with Fire and Sword. And when they make the challenge, Zilgoba says something like, and if you manage to defeat Vodioski, you'll have to fight me next. And then they're going to fight, and Zilgoba turns to Vodioski and he says something like, he's like, hey, if he kills you, he's like, you're the best swordsman in all of Poland, possibly Europe. If he kills you, I don't have a chance, so you got to win this thing. And Vodioski looks at him and goes, well, if you don't think you have a chance, why'd you challenge him? And Zilgoba just kind of rolls his eyes and is like, tempers were hot. Like, so many scenes that you're going to laugh at in this film. Like, the other two films had some jokes in them, but this one, again, it's a more modern film. It moves at a really fast pace. I just can't recommend it enough. And one thing I do want to say about Vodioski is he has the best introduction. One advantage to filming this whole trilogy backwards is this introduction, because you know who Vodioski is now. He had the first film that they made, and then he played a major part in the Deluge. So his introduction in this is really cool, because you see the shot of a castle, and there's two guys like standing guard on the castle, and the one pulls out a saber, and then he like tries to balance the saber on like the tip of his finger, and as soon as you see that, you're like, that's Vodioski. Like, I love that introduction. That everything about this movie, if you're only going to watch one of the three, watch with Fire and Sword. It does not get enough credit, in my opinion. So, yeah, my other two videos are gone. Again, maybe we'll sit down like this at another date and just bullshit like this about the movies and how much I like them, and I'll try and sort of recreate the second half of those videos and leave out the overall description of the synopsis of the films. But until then, that's pretty much all I got. And I don't know. I wanted to do Hexer next, and I wanted to do Knights of the Teutonic Order. Now I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to those, at least not in the capacity that I was doing them before, because I could probably fight this, and I think I got grounds for fair use, but I'm such a small channel. I think I have like 170 subscribers, and most of my videos don't even get more than like 20 views anyway, except the reviews of these two films, which easily broke a couple hundred in just a few days, and then got... So, trying to fight it ain't even worth my time, especially with me going into working 6 days a week here soon for an indefinite time period. So, yeah, holy crap, this video went on a lot longer than I thought it would, though I am going to edit it down, so it should be a little bit shorter. Maybe I'll try and get another video out here in the next day or two, or even today, because I just feel like filming something. So I got a couple ideas for some other game reviews, and I've got some footage saved from years ago. So maybe we'll do that, maybe not. But again, unfortunately, you can't watch my Pan Vodioski or my review of the Deluge, which again, like a year and a half working on that stuff, and now it's just gone, and that just sucks. It pisses me off like you wouldn't believe. But anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you stuck it out, kind of little overview of the trilogy, especially with Fire and Sword. As soon as I'm done here, go look up the soundtrack for With Fire and Sword here on YouTube. Put it on, sit back, relax. Helena's theme is like one of the greatest, most romantic themes ever, bar none. You're not going to be disappointed. So, until next time, I'll see you around.